Good morning on Sunday, the 9th of June, and welcome to your EPL Index Transfer Daily. Just feel like stuff is starting to ramp up, as we said. Tossing is done, and there's official bids going in now, ladies and gents, things being said. And there's only really one place to start, and that's on the time, because there were two real big stories, weren't there, around Newcastle yesterday that Sky Sports broke them, and if I could take various outlets for this, but let's just focus on the story at hand. So Newcastle yesterday made an offer to Burnley for James Trafford, a 21-year-old goalkeeper who's been cut from the Euro squad. He was in the provisional, but he will not go to the Euros, for £16 million. Now, there's all the stories are saying that Burnley want 20 million and they spend 19.19 on him. So pretty much break even, a little tiny bit of profit, possibly. I don't know, because there is a sell-on fee to, I think City had it in there because he came from City to Burnley. So that's interesting. And in the same stories, it changed because Luke Edwards, remember we said yesterday, mentioned that they were looking for 40 million for Yakuba Minte, their young winger who's been on loan at Feyenoord. Well, all the stories are saying 25 million, which might well tempt other clubs. Liverpool have been linked and others, so you would not be surprised if that's a bit of balancing of the books that way. Speaking of young England starters as well, this name just won't go away, and now he's not made the Euro squad. There's quite a few outlets, so I could even take the Liverpool Echo, his local one, that Jared Branthwaite is expected to complete a deal to move to Manchester United before that 30th of June deadline, i.e. the PSR, FFP, whatever you want to call it, deadline. And we know Everton are one of those clubs. They're looking at options for that. So, yeah, and I think it'd be more surprised if something didn't start to occur, shall we say, on that one. Speaking of, well, still as well stick in Manchester, a couple of things. That João Neves, the young Benfica midfield starter, 19 years old. This story for him to United won't go away. It may be paper talk, but it's in the UK and it's in Portugal as well. And the Portugal Ebola says that they're set to make a second big bid around £51 million. So that'll be interesting to see. And we did say we'll stick in Manchester, that quite a few outlets had that Julian Alvarez, the 24-year-old striker, the Argentine World Cup winner, has told City through his agents that he does want more game time. We'll see how they react to that. However, there's quite a lot of stories, as we know, linking him with moves to the likes of PSG. And even the Atletico Madrid president came out yesterday and said, yes, we like him, but we don't think he will leave City. He's on a fair old whack there, Alvarez. That'd be difficult to match. And also, you can't see City letting him go without a massive fight if they're even prepared to let him go. In job news, an interesting one. Leicester City, apparently, according to the Telegraph, they've made contact with former Brighton and Chelsea boss, Graham Potter. So that is an interesting one to keep an eye on. And I'm probably pronouncing this completely wrong, but Herzela is probably the big name everyone's thinking, who's that? Brighton are in talks to take the Sao Paulo coach to the Amex, aren't they? 31 years old to become the youngest Premier League boss in history. An interesting one. We all know how Big Tony makes things work, though, at Brighton, so it still doesn't really surprise us in certain ways. People might think Sao Paulo, is that a leap? And they have been in the Bundesliga too. So it's a shame he almost might not get that chance to see how he does in the Bundesliga, but what Brighton want, what Tony wants, they usually get. They are master movers there, aren't they? Douglas Luiz, this is interesting. You think Villa in the Champions League. Villa are also being mentioned in terms of PSR, FFP, and his thing keeps being linked with a lot of people. So Calcio Mercato, in Italy, says that Villa are looking at, and there's a few have mentioned this, a swap deal involving Weston McKennie and money in that regard to make Villa a bit. Arsenal, according to Rudy Galletti, are interested at the same time as well. And speaking of Arsenal, Dominic Solanke, this name won't go away. 65 million they're talking to the Express, and Arsenal are one of the ones that are interested. In London as well, we mentioned this a little bit yesterday. Bayern Munich, according to TalkSport, they've made a fresh approach to Fulham for João Paulinho. Max Eberl talking out loud, wasn't he, around that? Yeah, he would have helped our injury crisis. It looked done last year, but yeah, the shirts had everything, didn't he? But it didn't quite happen. In London as well, Tanguy Ndombele is finally set to leave on a free. That's set to be confirmed. Fulham boss as well, Marco Silva, apparently is a target for Nottingham Forest, and that's if his fellow Portuguese compatriot, Nuno Espirito Santo, does leave the City ground. There's a lot of talk around that at the moment. I say a lot of talk, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there's a few outlets and mentioning that. It's an interesting one. Obviously, Forest's issues are well known. Funny how all these teams that apparently struggling with the PSR, FFP are being mentioned at the same time. We'll jump around places now because Celtic, one of their Japanese wingers, Kyogo, their forward, you could say, 25 million apparently they want. He is 29 now, but he is looking for a move down south. And jumping around as well, Amadou Onana, the Everton player, Belgium international, 22 years old, said he would like to play for an international world club. And as the Standard mentioned, he's been repeatedly linked, it's fair to say, through this window with Arsenal. So that would be no surprise as well. Interesting ones as well. Probably a few outlets had this. He was on Sky Sports. Louis van Gaal, sort of as Louis van Gaal does, said a few things. But when he was talking about coaches, has now said that Arne Slot is the best technical coach out of Holland. However, United fans don't need to be too sad because he does mention specifically that Ten Hag shouldn't be sacked. He needs more time. Like Van Gaal himself, as he said, needed more time. So we'll let you make of that what you will. But on Sunday, the 9th of Jan, there's frees being done. There's transfer bids being rejected. Things look like they're starting to happen ahead of the start of the Euros on the 14th of June and the start of their transfer window on the 14th of June. Enjoy your weekends, ladies and gents. That was your EPL Index, Transfer Daily.